Is there anything that you see with the Maple Leafs right now that either it's the stats versus the eye test or you versus Jonas where you completely disagree on something?
What do we disagree on, Jonas? What should we throw out
We were getting
there?
into it pretty good, like on the weekend. I can't remember what it was.
Come on, you got to get him.
I swear.
Tell me you love John Klingberg on the weekend. That's what I needed.
No.
Jonas,
you know what I
Klingberg
think it was?
guy.
I just think it was about the way the team was built. And, like, I can say this, James. I'm just going to say it. We were just talking about, like, where does blame go if this doesn't work?
Right.
Is this a Brad Treliving thing? Is this a Brendan Shanahan thing? This team was built in a different way than 100% it would have been built if Kyle Dubas had been the general manager moving.
How so, though?
Forward.
How different do you think
They
it would
wouldn't
be
have signed
through 13
any of the
games?
players I think that they signed. Any of them.
Yeah, possibly.
Maybe Bertuzzi.
Maybe
but, like,
Bertuzzi, maybe Domi.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, guys, I think this is one where, like, eye test analytics. I mean, none of it is going to, like,
No.
with the way these guys are playing. Like, none of it's going to like Ryan Reaves. None of it's going to like Klingberg. I mean, how could it? You know, like, the analytics are so bad. The eye test is. I think the eye test on Klingberg is even worse than what his numbers are. Like, he looks completely lost out there.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what's wild.
As opposed to looking at it as if this is going to be a completely burning down fire and we're going to look to figure out who to blame. James, when you look at it, like, do you see the way out of this? Like, the coach kind of regrouped today and talked about some positivity. Do you see, like, the way out of this? Like, what needs to happen for that to happen, as opposed to saying, I just can't wait till 10 games from now when we talk about when we're going to play the blame game?
Yeah. Well, I mean, step number one is bench the worst parts of the roster, and right now that's Klingberg's number one. I mean, sit Klingberg. I don't think you're that far away from when you're thinking about putting him on waivers, to be honest. And nobody's going to claim the guy. I think he's untradeable at this point. You know, Anaheim had a hard time moving him last year at the deadline.
Yeah, they didn't, right?
No, they did. Minnesota.
He went to Minnesota.
But they didn't get anything.
They
Remember?
got nothing for him. That's right.
And he was terrible in Minnesota. You know, I was talking to our wild writer, Mike Russo, and he was talking about how Klingberg was one of the reasons why their playoffs went the way that it did. And his value has just completely tanked the last 2 or 3 years. So I would sit Klingberg, which it looks like potentially they're going to do tomorrow night against Calgary. I would sit Ryan Reaves, get someone up from the Marlies who's playing well. William Lagesson and Simon Benoit have both played fine. Play them more. Those are guys that have played in the NHL before. And that alone, O-Dog, it's going to make you better. It's going to make you more competitive. You know, if you look at the numbers, when Klingberg's on the ice, 60% of the scoring chances against the Leafs at 5-on-5 are when he's on the ice. It's a huge percentage. It's way more than the minutes that he's playing. So that's going to cut down on what you're giving up defensively right there.
Not my cup of tea, but that doesn't sound good.
Yeah, no, and that's valid. And to your point, James, when we talked about this last hour, you know, like we're piling on here with Klingberg, but it's so extreme and it's so acute that generally, you know, every player, especially a veteran player that has been around, that maybe can, if he can skate, if he can supply offense, maybe he's big, maybe he's tough. Like, there is a corner of the fan base that will go to war on behalf of the guy. And this feels very unique to me because I'm not seeing anyone. I don't think you can. Like, there's no redeeming qualities of his game right now, which is very difficult to accept through 13 games. But putting him aside, and let's say all that happens, Klingberg, they find a way to either move on from that or he finds a way to rectify his game somehow. Ryan Reaves, I don't think he'll get better than he is, but maybe they decide, okay, he's going to come out of the lineup and they're going to go a different direction. It's not as if this team has been a barn burner the first 15, 20 games of previous seasons, right? Like last year, I think it was worse last year. Like, as bad as it's been this year, they lost to the worst teams in the league.
That California trip was really
horrible
bad and dark.
And then 20 games later, it was like, oh, yeah, they're actually going to be exactly who we thought they were. Like,
I went back, Brian, and I looked at last year. Like, they pulled out of it pretty quickly. Like, you're right that, like, the first, like, I think it was the first 7 games or something were putrid last year, but they turned it around pretty quickly. Like, in November, they were like 11-1-3 or something like that. So, I mean, that's the difference. And we'll see if the switch flips here for them or not. But, I mean, the Leafs they've got like 4 games in the next 3 weeks because of the Sweden trip. So there's not going to be a whole lot of opportunities for them to turn it around. And, you know, if they don't win against Calgary and Vancouver this weekend, it's going to be a lot of sitting around and poking through the ashes of what's gone wrong.